Mitchell, I think her name is, Gone with the Wind. It had that feel where she has fallen in love with one guy, which is St. Francis of Assisi. She has a tutor that has fallen in love with her, and her friend, Clara, I think. And it's told from a first person perspective, which is hard. I think her friend's name is Clara. Oh my goodness, now I'm like, what is, I don't know nothing about birth and no babies. Claire. So close. Claire. So she has a friend, Claire, who's this sweet, gentle maiden thing who's fallen in love with St. Francis of Assisi. So two girls fall in love with one man. St. Francis of Assisi kind of chooses Claire because she's going to become a nun. She's beautiful. She's perfect. She's going to kind of fulfill his dreams to give up all and follow God and the church. And Rika is kind of like, you're nuts, this is ridiculous, go back to being a wealthy son, then we'll get married and life will be good. And the tutor is kind of helping her throughout everything. So again, it just really felt like Scott Odell just retold those classics, Gone with the Wind and Vanity Fair, through her, because even at the end of this book, which I didn't like, I don't really know much more about St. Francis of Assisi than I did before, because it's more about Rika's story. Even at the end, and this will probably be a spoiler alert, finally she sees that she's not going to get St. Francis of Assisi. I think he even dies. And she's just like, well, tutor, are you going to take me now? And he's just like, no, I'm not going to. And he goes off, and she kind of is still this person that you don't like. It's everything of just a retelling of Vanity Fair and Gone with the Wind. So maybe that's why I don't like it. I don't really like Gone with the Wind. There is no repentance. There's nothing. She just goes back to idolizing anything that she thinks that she should idolize. It was just disappointing. Things that were interesting to me were kind of the surrounding times and areas, as in like taking her ladies with her to go to the stores, how some of this artwork was done. Oh, with this, I would really caution that you read this before giving it to your children, because at one point she sees St. Francis of Assisi when he's on trial for stealing from his father. He basically strips himself of all his royal clothes and gives them to his father, and it's kind of like his shame, like, I did this to you, here's my clothes. But for her, she sees this as a reenactment of Adam and Eve, and she lets everything down and is going to be his Eve. And then she goes and writes him letters from Song of Solomon and blah blah blah. No, didn't like that one. Like, the more I'm talking about it, the more I'm getting agitated. I'm like, ooh, I really did not like it. Okay, so we had all of those, and we're at 36 minutes. I give up. This is just going to be a long video. I apologize. I know I can clean some of this up, but not too much. Let's start talking about the books that I did enjoy. Finally. Okay. First of all, one of the books, no, I did review it, so never mind. I'm thinking of Kilda. This is by Evelyn Wells. Okay, so I picked this up, interestingly, because I saw it at the free section of my library literally a week or two after I had talked to my husband that I wonder what Hollywood was like before it was invaded by Hollywood stars and everything and all of that, and just kind of how we got to that point. And then I found this, which is basically half of it is that. It's about Hollywood before it became the Hollywood that we know today. And it starts off with this woman on a plane going to see her son and grandchildren, and she's going to tell the story of Kilda. I think it's Kilda. And the story is about these two immigrant kids In the first half of the story, actually, I love everything about this book. This is like a 5-star read for me. The first half of the book is basically how this boy and this girl who don't understand each other's languages, that came to this country to make a better life for themselves, figures out how to communicate with one another. And then after all that, and it's how they go from New York or Manhattan or Boston or one major city. They're leaving this, or it's getting behind. This is about the time that the industries were seeing strikes and things like that. And so he's like, nope, we're going to go get our farm, and we're going to go start our farm in Kansas, I believe. It is. Okay, so they go to Kansas, and you have your first, like, sodbuster story in Kansas. And it's how they have this beautiful life all set up. And there was a tragic thing. And then after that, like, life was not this beautiful life it was. Now, this tragic event was very hard to read, and it's the kind of thing that I shouldn't like this book because of it. So, in 4 or 5 years, she has 4 or 5 children, and she ends up pregnant again. And at this point, she is depleted. You can just see her husband is depleted. He's just like, why can animals do this and I can't even look at you without heaping more work on myself, because they're barely making it. And so she goes to the outhouse and almost kills herself. So she goes out to the outhouse, and that baby is no longer in her stomach. She does a self-abortion. And without knowing anything else, this one neighbor kind of basically takes on a vigilante type of thing for the husband. Again, not knowing anything, takes matters into her own hands, who then her husband takes matters into his own hands, and they tar and feather her husband. Okay. Let's try that again. So, Kelda and her husband are grieving and all that. The neighbor comes in with her husband and decides to take matters into her own hands and tars and feathers, or instigates tarring and feathering Kelda's husband. That's what I meant to say. And he was never the same since. His depression was bad. And with the boys, he is going to raise this specific picture that he wants for his boys. And with that, his kids end up scattering. And it's heartbreaking, but at the same time, one of the children, after some had died, and they have to live with this, and Kelda talks about it, like, she is blunt that this is her shame. It's beautiful, guys. I can't say anything else other than it's beautiful. This is probably one of my favorite books. And then after that, the son that ran away after his father expected him, and Kelda ends up going to live with him. And through that, then the daughter is raised that ends up writing the story. So it's Kelda's granddaughter that writes the story and telling it to her grandchildren. And then you have California. So he ended up running away, went to Texas, went to different places, and ended up in Hollywood, California. And he is kind of a roving guy. He's not very steadfast. He is not his father. He was everything that is opposite to his father. Kind of probably based on certain circumstances surrounding his life. And then you have Hollywood. And it was, again, just a different Hollywood than what I know today. And getting to see it develop, like, they're talking about this house and not anybody around, and then how that had changed and multiplied, how the son of Kelda that ran away ended up being in movies, and then how their daughter ended up finding a guy and marrying him, and how that story progressed. So I'm going to tell you right now, it is not going to be the kind of book that some people are really going to enjoy. I loved it. There's just something about it, about this family saga, that goes down through generation, and seeing how these two immigrant couples that worked so hard for something kind of left a legacy, even though so much of it was stripped from them. It's beautiful in that way, and it's beautiful to see how we have made America, so to speak. So this is I Am Thinking of Kilda by Evelyn Wells, and it was a fantastic read. And along those lines, this is the book that I read to my boys. I read this as a teen. I love this series. This is the Corey Bell Hollister series, and this is like a companion. This is about her brother that runs away in the middle of the series, and then Michael Phillips ended up writing his story, like what happened during that year he was gone. If you have not read Journals of Corey Bell Hollister, they are phenomenal, and I highly recommend them. And Gray Fox is probably my favorite, because this book, it is Christian fiction, and it is a sermon lived. After the boy runs away, after basically yelling at his father that he was not the right father, he's not a good enough father for him, and disrespects him and disrespects his wife, and he just runs out. And then he ends up being part of the Pony Express from California through Nevada and Utah. And during that, the Paiute Indians ended up chasing him at one point. For the most part, they would leave him alone, but sometimes they would just be angry about something and then take it out on the travelers. And they go after him at one point, and he really hurts himself. And then he wakes up in the cave, and there's this guy taking care of him. And this guy's name is Hawk. And this Hawk is a very deep, reflective kind of character. And Hawk, basically, he lives with him for the next year, learning the desert and finding its secrets and resources and just beauty of the desert. And this is in Utah or Nevada. I don't remember which one he finally ends up being stuck in. But Gray Fox tells Zach's redemptive story, if you will. Hawk knows how to start explaining the landscape and how you're going to survive in the landscape, but then starts peeling back these onion layers and reveals a spiritual story that makes Zach kind of grow and mature and think and reflect. And then at one point, he has to make a decision, like what is going to make him be a man. And it's a beautiful book. I highly recommend it, especially, I think this is so adamantly Christian that it would be hard for anybody outside Christian to appreciate it, because I think they would really feel like they are getting preached at. And I know I don't have all of like a across the board Christian view on my channel, so I just wanted to throw that out. But it is a beautiful story. I loved it. And then along those lines with Christian redemptive type stories is Halstead House by Christie Mortensen. She's only done 2 books, and the first one was kind of like a middle grade book. It was beautiful. My daughter loves it and keeps reading it. It's called Love, Mary Elizabeth. Kind of takes place through letters during I don't remember if it's World War I or II. But if you guys can get your hands on it, I highly recommend it. I'll leave it linked down below. Actually, most of these books will be linked down below that I can recommend. There's some that I'm not going to. And those links kind of help support my family and this channel. This one is kind of a cozy read. It's what I would call a cozy read. There's nothing about it that's kind of like this that really just helped me grow, for lack of a better word. It was just a nice, cozy, let's cuddle up kind of read. It takes place after World War I, and it's about this woman that runs a boarding house. And I think that's one reason why I love it so much. It's the kind of story that I gravitate towards. I love the idea of running a boarding house and everything that goes along with it. And it's during the time period that I really enjoy. After World War I, you still had that homestead feel, and she definitely runs her boarding house like a homestead. Her husband has died in the war, and she is raising her daughter, and her sister is helping her. And it's just this beautiful story. And then a friend of hers comes back from the war, kind of wounded, and through him and the sister, they kind of help Grace, who is our main character, see the bitterness and hardship that she has built around herself concerning God and concerning her husband. And that was actually one of the things that I really enjoyed about this book, is that it was kind of like this peeled back onion layered feel for the character of Grace. Just like there is nothing about her that I liked, even at the end. Grace ends up being a likable character, but the more she grows, like the more you like her, the more personality kind of flourishes and blossoms. Allie is adorable. Allie is her daughter, and Allie reminded me so much of one of my boys, which is kind of ironic, but there's just something about that personality that just reminded me of him. So that was kind of neat. This was a 4-star read. It was really interesting. It was a really good, cozy read. Just one of those things that after some of this heavy stuff, which I haven't even gotten to all my heavy stuff yet. Actually, I just have one heavy stuff here. It was just a nice break and calm and all of that. I did want to say, on Goodreads, I show what I am currently reading, and I try to update that as soon as I start a book. The reason I do that is so that you, the reader, or so that those that are seeing how long it actually takes me to read a book, I can show you the stack now, and all you see is what it took place after I read, or after I've uploaded the last video. Some days it can take me 2 or 3 days. It depends on what is going on in our lives right now. I don't have all of the work that I had to do back in California. I'm not running 3 jobs out of my house, and right now, how our house is set up, there is not so much to do. And as we see with it snowing right now, it's not like I can go outside and work on the garden a lot right now, bringing the kids with me. So there's a little bit of that's kind of holding us off in what we're able to accomplish. And so we have more reading, and that's fine. It's wonderful. Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. I am one of those rare people that I don't love Jane Eyre. I don't dislike it. I just don't love it. And I think I had started another Bronte book. The one with Heathcliff. The one with Heathcliff, and I just stopped. I needed a break from the Bronte. And then this is the one that an Instagram group picked for the month of March. We're trying to read a classic book every month. I did Tess of D'Urberville's. Then we had another one that I didn't get finished. And then we have this one, and now working through another Hardy, which is Mayor of Casterbridge. Now, I have seen the movie Casterbridge, and I did see Tenant of Wildfell Hall that Bronte wrote, that one of the Brontes wrote, but I had not read Agnes Grey. And this one has notes in it that kind of shows correlations between this story and Tenant of Wildfell Hall and the Brontes' lives. Honestly, I started this one out and I didn't think I was going to enjoy it because, it was interesting because it's the story of like a governess's perspective on life. And so she goes to the first house, and the kids are total brats. And Agnes has some reflections on there that I thought was really interesting about the parents, about the schooling, about the characters of children that kind of reminded me of a Charlotte Mason atmosphere. And then that position kind of falls through. It wasn't a very good position. And she goes to her second position. And her second position is more favorable. She has basically two selfish girls that are almost grown and don't need her anymore. And that, at that point, I really got interested in this story. It's a little bit, in my opinion, the second half of the story has a little bit of wives and daughters, with Cynthia's flirtatious nature, and Agnes kind of relates with Molly with their common decency, like don't toy with men's affections, don't play around, don't, just be honorable and do what is right kind of mentality. And I think Agnes and Molly have that. And then in a similar way, Agnes also reminds me of Fanny Price, which is my favorite Jane Austen character. She has this steadfastness to do what is right, even if the situation kind of proves that it's a little bit difficult. So she falls in love with I think it's a curate, but basically what we would be today as a pastor, I believe. And she kind of falls in love with him, but he is being wooed by the one daughter's affection. So she's kind of just toying with him, like, might as well, like, why should this governess have him? Like, why can't everybody love me and like me and adore me and blah, 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 blah. And so Agnes kind of has to see him be taken in by this girl, which is very Fanny Price, Edmund, and Mary Crawford's kind of story there. So I thought that was really interesting, especially since I know the Brontes admired Jane Austen so much. And it was interesting again because, remember I mentioned that Wives and Daughters, Elizabeth Gaskell had written a Bronte, I think it was Charlotte Bronte's biography. So at some point she admired them, and so they all kind of did the same story plotline. So there was a lot in here that I want to go back and highlight and make notes and do all of that. I really, really did like this one, and I gave it 5 stars, and I did not think I was going to. But the more I got into it, the more I just loved this character. I loved all the one-liner sermons, for lack of a better word, which is kind of what the thing I didn't like about Tess of d'Urberville. So a different type of sermon, I guess. So I really, really liked that one. And then finally, guys, the last book I'm going to share with you is The Mighty Miss Alone by Christopher Paul Curtis. Okay, this author tends to be a hit or miss for me. We loved But Not Buddy. It's not that we dislike The Watsons Go to Birmingham or Elijah Buxton. We don't dislike them, but I have more concerns about my kids just picking them up and reading them than I did But Not Buddy. And this one is, But Not Buddy at one point ends up in a camp. Yeah, I know, you like that one. But Not Buddy ends up in a camp and he meets this girl, and this is her story. And she is a smart whippersnapper type of personality. And it starts off with her going to school, getting the best grades. Like she is very driven, she's a perfectionist, she's going to get all of these things, and it's her story of basically how they started falling down in poverty and ending up in this tramp camp. And it's very interesting. I loved every minute of it. I didn't want to put it down. I don't remember anything objectionable in here. Objectionable things that I don't think anybody would like. So, do you want to read this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to pass this on to my son, and I mean that's going to wrap it up for this hour-long video. Wow. So those are the books that I read. I will be so happy now to kind of put away the ones that I love and pass along the ones that I don't want. I've been reading a ton of books lately, just trying to get rid of the ones that I had collected that I really wanted to read but don't just want to give away, even though I have so many books that I want to read and enjoy. I do want to read all these, but they're ones that I kind of want to see if I keep. So it's nice trying to whittle down ones that will stay on my shelf and ones that just need to go. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I think I might turn this into 2 parts, so I hope you enjoyed both parts of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have another cup of coffee and read another chapter. I'll see you next time. Bye.